Hello, this is Gareth from the iMoot team. I'd like to welcome you to a presentation by Benjamin Wagner from Web Anywhere, a certified Moodle partner, one of the excellent Moodle partners around the world helping to support Moodle, who's going to present on applications of gamification in a workplace setting. I'd like to thank him for his time and putting the slide together. And finally, can we also thank Big Boo Button for providing the software and the time and services and things to make all of this happen. Thank you, Ben. Away you go.
Thank you very much, Gareth, and a big thank you to you and the rest of the iMoot team for all the work you put in. This is the third year I've presented, and it's always been completely seamless, so it's always a big thrill to work with you guys. Now, what I'm going to talk about today is applications of gamification in a workplace setting, but I'm going to kick off just with a brief introduction to who I am. I'm sure there's plenty of you who have never heard of me before, never met me before. Just give you a bit of my background, and then we'll get going. As Gareth said, my name is Ben Wagner, and I work for a company called Web Anywhere in the UK, which is one of the UK's Moodle partners. My personal background, I started off in central government here in the UK, eventually moved into web tech and moved into a local government setting, working partly with adult education in that role before moving into working in secondary schools. After I did that, Web Anywhere snapped me up, and I originally worked with their schools division and then moved on to workplace learning, working with our corporate clients. That's kind of where I've come from. Over the last couple of years, I've been working heavily with corporate clients. And what I've found is that there's a lot of things that everyone can learn from each other, both corporates learning from schools and schools learning from corporates. So my hope is today just to go through a little bit of that and give everyone a chance to kind of hear what I've found out. If at any point people have questions or I suddenly drop off and you can't hear me, just mention it in the chat and hopefully we can sort things out. But I'll also do a pause at the end for additional questions. I'll also be distributing my contact information at the end, and it's on the course in the iMoot Moodle as well. So if anyone does have a question they think of later, or if you're watching this in the future on YouTube, or if you just want to have a slightly longer discussion than you want to do here, then just feel free to get in touch with me. All my details will be at the end. So we'll get started. So starting off with, what is gamification? Now, it's a term that gets used a lot these days. I remember a few years ago when it was relatively new. But what I always find is good is to kick things off by explaining where I'm coming from on this topic, to make sure that we're all on the same page and that you can all understand where I've started from. So at its starting point, gamification is using methods based in gaming for learning. Now, originally when this sort of started first coming up, a lot of it was based around learning games. So things like you'd be doing an activity that looks like a game from the end user's point of view, but you're actually learning something from it. As the concepts evolved, it also includes using methods that are used in particularly computer gaming to encourage and enhance learning experiences. So this can often be linked to things like competition, fun but learning that's enjoyable, and using things like achievements and medals and things like that to encourage people to go further in their learning. A lot of these things will be familiar to users of computer games, things like PlayStations and Xboxes, and I'll be going through a little bit of what the key concepts are, but also how you can use them directly within Moodle. Now, one of the first things to cover is what are the differences between workplaces and schools. Obviously, my own background, a lot of people here's background has been in academic education, and I've found that working with workplaces and their learning is a very different kettle of fish. So I think it's key just to run through some of the differences I found, which will help you understand where some of these organisations are coming from. So the first one is that there's often shorter training periods. So a lot of time in a workplace you might have a 1 week or a 2 week induction, and then you might have isolated spates of face-to-face training over a few days from time to time in your career. There's unlikely to be large lengths of classroom training like there is in a school. There's a lot more focus on targeted training and a lot more focus on the job continued professional development. So unlike a lot of schools where you're trying to learn the breadth of a subject and trying to understand everything there is to know about philosophy or history or whatever topic you're studying, With workplaces, a lot of the time the focus is on your specific job, so you're learning the skills you need to do your job better, rather than a broader view of the career as a whole. Now, one of the key ones for planning, training and learning within a workplace is that you often suffer from a much higher turnover than you see in a school. In an average school, you might have a student for at least 4 or 5 years, maybe up to 6 or 7, and even at university you usually expect them to have them for about 3 years. Now compare that to a workplace. These days there aren't many people who have a job for life anymore. People do move around, and 3 or 4 years can be a very, very long time to stay at one place. Often you'll find people are there for much shorter, maybe even only a year. And in particular industries, for instance retail, you can find that the turnover is much, much faster than that. So you can end up where you've got staff rotating in and out, maybe on short-term contracts. And you find that maybe they last 2 or 3 months and you've got to train them up in that time. Just to answer Tim's comment about is there evidence to show that organisations investing more in developing their staff tend to retain them longer, I think there definitely is, but I think it depends sometimes on the organisation you're dealing with. So I have seen that, particularly with large organisations, if there is a definitive career path and you invest a lot in your staff, you can retain them. But there are always going to be some places, for instance retail, where you actually do just want staff for a 3-month busy period at Christmas. And you have to kind of plan and tailor your learning to try to see, are you going to meet those needs within that time. Now, one of the other things that you have to tackle in a workplace is you often suffer from having a lot fewer digital natives in your organisation. This is a term that's become common these days for particularly people who are younger, who have grown up with IT. They've always had computers in the house. They're used to smartphones. They're used to tablets. And you hand them one of these devices, or you can hand them an LMS, and it's not an alien concept. In the workplace these days, there are plenty of digital natives and plenty of people that are really on board with that and have come up through universities, especially with using software like LMSs and Moodle. But you do still have a large proportion of people who are slightly technophobic. And although they may be confident using IT for their day-to-day job, the idea of e-learning is a little bit alien to them. You have to really make sure you've focused your incentivization on those people to make sure that they feel engaged. And again, it's not for everyone, but a lot of organizations suffer to offer dedicated learning time. It's a brilliant thing to do, and if you happen to work for an organization that does afford you learning time, then you are very, very lucky. It is true that a lot of the top organizations, particularly in the tech field, people like Google and Valve, are notorious for offering that self-led learning, the ability to work on your own projects and that sort of thing. But unfortunately, the world isn't perfect, and there are plenty of organizations where that isn't the case. And if you're in HR or training and you're trying to manage your training, you've got to understand that sometimes you might not have dedicated training time. So it's about how you try to get people to engage with the training that is available when it is available. Now the first one we're going to touch upon is gamification and badges. So you'll probably have all heard of these, and probably at least have all been awarded one over the course of the iMoot, the iMoot Attender badge on the right. And those of you that are presenting as well as attending will have the presenter badge on the left. Now badges are a great concept. I'm not going to go into massive detail on these because there's been plenty of really good talks so far on gamification and badges. For those who haven't really stumbled across it yet, the Badges project is being run by Mozilla, the people behind the Firefox browser, and it's been done as another open and open source project that Moodle is integrated with. Now in terms of gamification, the great thing with this is that you can have badges awarded for certain achievements during your learning process. So this is very similar to those that are used to things like Xboxes, PlayStations and Steam, where if you do particularly well at a game, you'll get awarded a badge. And in those cases, they're often called achievements or medals or things like that. What's great about this is, particularly for your staff who do game outside of work, they were used to this concept, and the idea of getting a badge can be really, really good. And it can be effectively a permanent record. You can export it to a backpack, and you can transition them between employers and between jobs, and you slowly build up your backpack of your training, which is great. And I'm sure there's been lots of you hunting around for the badges that are available at the iMoot. Now badges are a really, really great way of encouraging learning, but there are other ways of doing it within Moodle that I want to touch on as well today. Now, I'm going to summarize through some of these and then hopefully we'll touch them in a little more detail in a few minutes. But one of the first ones, which you've probably all come across even if you haven't realized, is ratings on forums. Right now it's very easy to tag a forum post as helpful, and if you go on the Moodle.org forums, you'll see that quite common, and particular people will get a particularly helpful Moodler badge for having got lots of helpful tags on their posts. And that's a really nice way of just having a positive feedback loop for people contributing to forums. So in the workplace, you might have people who are experts in their field who contribute some information to a discussion, and it can be a really good way of rewarding them from the staff that they're helping. Now, another idea that we'll discuss further is public gradebooks. Now, this would be on the relatively unusual side in a lot of schools, although it is coming along. But in workplaces, people have discussed and seen implemented actually opening up the gradebook to students to view. So you can see both your own performance, and if you're learning in a team or a group, you can see the entire group's performance as well. This can be great twofold. One's for a bit of competition and getting people to pull themselves forward. But also, if you've got a mixed abilities team, it can often lead to people helping each other out and assisting the weaker members of the team and kind of bringing them along and helping them to learn. Now, another aspect kind of related to this is leadership boards. Now, at the kind of very basic sense, on a course or on maybe even the front page of your Moodle, you can have leadership boards showing various things. So this is like a league you'd see in football or soccer, depending on which part of the world you're from, and it can show whatever information you want. So you might put one up that has organised by team who's got the most completions of this training. You might put up a leadership board on the course for whoever scored the best on the quiz. I've seen some people try to do this with PHP and SQL statements, but equally it can work really nicely just being a little bit of a manual process, and just showing people a little bit of a snapshot of where they're doing. Now, one of the other key features is the quiz module. Now, quizzes are a very common game. There's plenty of quiz-based games. But the nice thing with the Moodle quiz module in particular is you can gradate responses. So depending on how someone does on each question or on the quiz itself, you can have different responses, different comments going back to them. And you can also allow them to take the quiz more than once. So if you open up the feedback to be really responsive feedback that's encouraging them, but also say, oh, didn't quite get there, or maybe this question's the one you're struggling with a bit, allowing them to take it more than once can encourage them to go off and try it again and learn some more from the materials on the course, and then come back and attempt the quiz again. Now, what I've been doing recently is chatting to some of our clients and just trying to find out some details on some of those topics we've touched on ways that they've actually implemented this sort of thing in their organizations. So leadership boards are a key one to start with. We've seen that in quite a few places, and often it works in two different types of ways. You could have leadership boards aimed at incentivizing the learners. So that's where you might have a course and it's showing who's done the best at the quiz, or who's which team scored the best. But also we found a lot of impact using them to incentivize the managers of teams. So we'll find learners will often say, oh, that's great, saying you've got all this e-learning up, but my boss hasn't really given me a chance to get it done. And what's really nice is when you see the managers kind of competing, and they're seeing leadership boards of which team's doing best, and maybe theirs is or theirs isn't, they are then incentivized not only to try to get their team up, but also to give them the time and resources they need to do that training. And also remove a lot of the barriers to training we've seen in organizations. If you have two teams doing broadly similar jobs, sat down the corridor from each other, for instance, and one team's saying, oh, I'd love to do that e-learning, but we're really, really busy with all these big projects on, and we just don't really have the time, The other team, who's equally busy and doing the same sort of work, has found the time and is scoring really well. You can often find that removes that kind of excuse people like to trot out and say, oh, I'm too busy. Because, the other teams prove they can, and because that's public knowledge, it kind of encourages that team just to get on with the training and, see what they can get done. The forum posts have been really useful. We've seen some people use them in the same way Moodle.org does, where you tag them as helpful and have badges awarded. The other thing we've seen is having someone maybe from training admin or even HR keeping an eye on what the forum posts are getting the most ratings, and highlighting them outside of the Moodle or even on the front page of the Moodle themselves. So we have organisations who do things like start newsletters, very common, maybe monthly or weekly, and they then highlight a particularly good forum post. Now, this is good twofold. Firstly, it rewards that person and encourages them to continue posting, continue sharing their knowledge, but it also encourages others to try to aspire to be the person in the newsletter next week. So it's a particularly good way of bringing e-learning to the forefront of everyone's mind. So it's not just this thing that's off to one side, but it's actually made the company newsletter. And particularly if it's a regular thing, it can be a really nice way of reminding people and prompting them and getting them involved in performing their e-learning well. Now, another way, as I mentioned earlier on, is the public display of scores, usually through opening up the gradebook. Now, we found this used for competition purposes. So this is a really good way. If you've got a team of kind of broadly similar abilities, you'll find they begin to compete more and try to out-compete each other. Try to see who can score the best overall. If there's a particularly difficult quiz, you'll find that they're all studying that a bit harder and working that a bit harder to try to be the one who scores 100%. What we've also found the public gradebooks useful for is when you have a mixed ability team. So often you'll have, let's say it's a development team, you might have a couple of really senior developers who breeze through the learning. Then you have junior developers who kind of do some of it and are struggling a bit with others. They can immediately see who those experts in the team are, and they can go and ask them for advice and have a chat with them. Which is, it's always flattering to be the experienced one in the group, so it boosts them up a bit. But also it means that you've got that kind of natural mentor-mentee relationship developing, just because the junior people know who to go and talk to, and they know who the people are who have the ability to help them. What's really nice with that is you can find that extends beyond whatever quiz or piece of work you've set them in training department. If they develop a nice relationship with the guy a few desks over because they've worked together on some training, you'll find that actually helps to permeate through the rest of their job, so that it's not just this one-off or help me out with this homework sort of thing, but it becomes an ongoing partnership and they get to know each other and work together more. And obviously badges are a key thing, as we've said already, and badges can be used in so many ways it would take a good few hours to go through all the things we've seen. But much like the iMoot uses them, there are often rewards around for doing particular things or completing particular quizzes. We've also seen rewards for things like assisting, helping out in forums, because you can award manual badges if you need to. We've seen things for actually creating content, so you have badges awarded for those who are creating good learning content for their colleagues. And things like contributing to group activities. So if you've got something like a glossary or a wiki, which are really great for kind of knowledge sharing and getting those ideas back from the more experienced members of staff, you can find that badges are a really nice way of rewarding that, and people begin to build up a portfolio and be able to show off that they're this experience or have achieved this. Now the last one on my list, which will explain the picture that may have been baffling people for the talk I've been doing so far, is non-Moodle related rewards. So one of the key things we've seen is linking your LMS to a reward-based system. But the rewards don't have to entirely be within Moodle, which is obviously what most of the examples so far have been. So we've seen a couple of guys do this sort of thing. And in particular, there was one organisation who had a lot of contributing to learning. So they were encouraging their staff to upload their own resources, upload comments, contribute to glossaries, even contribute little video clips and that sort of thing. And the way they rewarded that behaviour is the work that got the best feedback and was deemed to be the best and got the most positive hits, that sort of thing. The people who created that were actually rewarded with iPads in this case, but it could be other non-Moodle based rewards. We've seen people who've been rewarded with time off. Maybe if you've managed to get all your compulsory training done, you can get Friday afternoon off as a bit of a break. We've seen people, take all the key contributors to the VLE out for lunch. There's all sorts of ways you can do it. The key thing is not to view your LMS in isolation. It should be a key part of your business all the way through. And the idea of kind of this implementation would be that you take all the positive people are doing on their LMS and then push it over to a non-Moodle based reward which, will start to bed it in, and it might be something people see. For instance, they see this entire team leaving early on a Friday, they're going to be thinking, oh, how come that happened? How did they get that reward? And of course, over the water cooler, talk will come out that it was because they completed all their obligatory training, and that would be something that other people will take notice of and hopefully work forward in the future. Now, we've worked with lots of clients over the years and developed advice and helped them come up with plans. And what I wanted to do today was just to give you a bit of an overview of how we advise someone, so that you can take something from it. Obviously, it can't be customized as it would on a one-on-one. But I've kind of gone through some of the common threads when we talk to people about these sort of things to give you some overall advice, kind of in the spirit of sharing, to give you a starting place for what you want to do. Now, the first up is to have a motivation plan. Now, this isn't just for the LMS, it's a general staff motivation plan. As Tim mentioned earlier, there are plenty of studies that reflect that organizations that invest more in their staff actually increase staff retention, can increase staff morale and happiness, and help people with their work-life balance, and generally do a better job for you in the long run. So the trick is not to just, focus in on the LMS, which obviously would be a training team's focus, but work with the broader HR structure and the other motivation schemes to actually develop a broad plan for motivation. As a part of that, you'll then develop your LMS motivation plans. So you might decide you want to open the greybook here, you might want to design these badges. Then you might agree with HR to look at the other non-Moodle-based rewards. It might be something like rewarding them with some time off for completing training in time or something like that. So the trick is to work for a company-wide plan that isn't just one department or one team in isolation, but is actually something that's seen across the company, which again can get a lot of buy-in from other managers, can help them to agree with where you're going and what you're doing, but also means that people have this kind of unified approach and will talk and word will get out and that sort of thing. People often say to us, that's fine, okay, yes, we want to motivate our staff, but where do we get started? There's so many things we'd love to put on a VLE, there's so many applications we'd love to develop, but where should we begin really? That's the key question. And my main bit of advice would be, you want to start with that training that has a very high throughput that a lot of your staff will undertake, particularly on a regular basis. Now, there's a few different types of this. One of the key ones is induction. So as new employees join the business, if your LMS is fully set up to handle your induction program, and I've seen people have it where they sign up in advance of starting the company to start that program, so they can really get a feel for your culture before they even step in the door. But also, it can be a good way of getting them used to game-based rewards, getting badges, completing parts of induction, and that sort of thing. And once people have got through that induction, they'll be the ones kind of evangelizing the business about that experience. So people say, oh, I'm not so sure about this LMS, and the new guy says, actually, well, we did induction and it's really good, really easy to use. And we completed a lot of training and they rewarded us, and we got these badges and some time off, let's say. That can slowly start to spread the word through the business that this is a good thing and not just something to ignore, and actually something to engage in. The other side to look at is your mandatory training. Now, pretty much every organization will have some form of mandatory training, even if it's just health and safety training or data protection training or something like that. And other organizations, like if you work in the finance sector, probably have a lot more, and there's a lot more to cover. But that sort of training people have to repeat on a regular basis. So any alterations you make that incentivize them or reward badges and that sort of thing will start to get noticed by people. If all your staff are going through that training every year, you develop a new feature that's a really nice way of engaging them and getting them involved, then people will start to talk because everyone has to do it, and they say, oh, didn't you redo your first aid at work training? Oh yeah, it was really good. We did it on the Moodle VLE and it worked really well, and we got this badge afterwards that lasts a year because badges can expire, and it's a really nice experience and we really enjoyed it. Now the nice thing is when you start with things like induction and mandatory training, is you have such a high throughput of staff that you'll find most of your staff has tried either one or the other at some point, and you'll get a nice well of feedback. And the trick is to start with only a few courses, get your feedback in, and see what works, because not every organisation is the same. So there's some of the things I've discussed today that just won't work for your organisation. That's fine. It doesn't have to be the same for everyone. And there's others that you'll find are taken up really, really well. The trick is to know your organisation and do some testing, try it out on some courses, and see what works for you guys. Now, another aspect of a plan can be a soft launch of some features. So though it's really great to do a big launch and have lots of internal communication and that sort of thing, it can also be really nice to have a soft launch. So what that means is that, say you want to try out a feature, maybe just get one trainer to try it out with one group. So for instance, the open gradebooks. Challenge a group and say, right, we thought about doing this. Are you all up for this? Does this sound good? And if they agree, then that's a group to launch it with and give it a go and see what they think and get some feedback. The other thing with soft launching is if you're soft launching rewards, it can be a really nice way of someone getting an unexpected reward, rather than trying to hunt it out and try to look. They are filling in their training as they were going to anyway and stumble across an award for a badge. That can be really nice and unexpected, and they can feel quite nice about getting this unexpected reward. Equally, if you have an employee who's always very diligent and always make sure that they get all their obligatory training done as soon as they're told to, and it's known in the teams that Sarah's always the person who gets their training done first, and maybe give Sarah the afternoon off on Friday and say, we really appreciate what you're doing, and you've always filled your VLE quotas in quickly, have the afternoon off. Because no one's expecting that sort of behaviour, it actually has a bigger impact as a reward, because it's unexpected, it's a nice thing for someone, but equally it gives them a chance to get something back for the hard work they've put in as well. And that can apply to all sorts of features, things like looking for more feedback from peers, getting people to contribute to glossaries. If they do this sort of thing anyway, then start off with rewarding those people before you even got a full framework in for rewards as a whole, because that way you're encouraging that positive behaviour that you're seeing already. Now I'm going to kind of pause there. I don't want to take up hours and hours of everyone's time, as I'm sure you understand this is a very, very large topic, so we could go on for some time. But I'm happy to open the floor for questions now. If anyone has any, they want to either type in chat or jump on the mic. But equally, I'm happy to be contacted afterwards. My email, my Twitter, or my LinkedIn are up there. So if you want to add me or tweet me or email me, either just to have a chat, always up for a chat, or if you've got any specific questions that you'd rather take offline and have a chat with me about, that's absolutely fine. So I will open the floor up if anyone wants to throw anything in chat or turn on their mic.
Hi Ben, Gareth. Just whilst while people are maybe perhaps typing some questions and thinking, once again, on behalf of the iMoot team, thank you very much for presenting this evening. Sure, gamification is a really, really hot topic these days, and there's a lot there. So again, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Gareth.